Dramatic pause, June 22, 1941. Pause, Operation Barbarossa begins, and the Luftwaffe strikes Soviet airfields with devastating precision. Pause, in a single day, the Soviet Air Force loses over 1,200 aircraft. Slight pause, but this catastrophic opening would not define the air war on the Eastern Front. From the ashes of defeat, Soviet aviation would rise to become one of the most formidable air forces in history, emphasis, producing some of the war's most iconic and effective aircraft. Today, we're exploring every single Soviet aircraft that fought in World War II, from the obsolete biplanes that met the German invasion, to the cutting-edge jets that emerged as the war ended. Pause, this is the complete story of Soviet aviation in the Great Patriotic War. When Germany invaded in 1941, much of the Soviet Air Force was equipped with aircraft designed in the 1930s. Pause, these planes were hopelessly outmatched, slight pause, but their pilots fought with desperate courage. The Polikarpov I-15 was a biplane fighter that looked like it belonged in World War I, not World War II. With its distinctive gull-shaped upper wing and open cockpit, this little fighter was already obsolete by 1941. Maximum speed? Just 230 miles per hour. The I-15 bis was a slightly improved version, but neither could compete with German Messerschmitts. Still, in the opening months of the war, desperate Soviet pilots flew these biplanes against the Luftwaffe, knowing they were outmatched. Some even resorted to Taran, ramming attacks, when they ran out of ammunition. The I-153, nicknamed Chaika, or Seagull, was the last Soviet biplane fighter. It featured retractable landing gear, unusual for a biplane, and could reach 267 miles per hour. Armed with 4 machine guns and capable of carrying rockets or small bombs, the Chaika served mainly in ground attack roles after 1941. Despite its obsolescence, the I-153 continued flying until 1943, particularly in ground support missions where its ruggedness and ability to operate from rough fields proved valuable. Now here's a more interesting aircraft, the Polikarpov I-16, nicknamed Ishak or Little Donkey by Soviet pilots, and Rata or Rat by the Spanish Republicans who flew it in the Spanish Civil War. The I-16 was actually revolutionary when it appeared in 1934, the world's first low-wing monoplane fighter with retractable landing gear. Stubby, compact, and incredibly agile, it could hold its own in a dogfight. But by 1941, with a top speed of only 304 miles per hour and light armament, it was clearly outclassed. Thousands of I-16s were lost in the first months of the war, but the little fighter continued serving through 1943, mainly in ground attack roles. Its toughness and maneuverability kept it relevant longer than it should have been. As 1941 turned to 1942, new Soviet fighters began reaching the front lines. These aircraft would change the course of the air war. The Yak-1 was one of the Soviet Union's answers to the German threat. Designed by Alexander Yakovlev, it entered service just months before the German invasion. With a top speed of 373 miles per hour and armed with a 20mm cannon and 2 machine guns, the Yak-1 was competitive with German fighters. Light and agile, it excelled in dogfights below 13,000 feet. The Yak-1 was also relatively easy to build and maintain, crucial qualities for the Soviet Union's wartime economy. Over 8,700 were produced, and it formed the basis for an entire family of successful fighters. The Yak-7 began life as a 2-seat trainer but was quickly adapted into a single-seat fighter. It was essentially an improved Yak-1 with better performance and reliability. Though produced in smaller numbers, around 6,400 aircraft, the Yak-7 served as an important bridge to even better designs. The Yak-9 became the most produced Soviet fighter of the war, with over 16,700 built. First flying in 1942, it featured numerous improvements over earlier Yaks, including better range, heavier armament, and improved high-altitude performance. The Yak-9 came in many variants, the Yak-9D long-range escort fighter, the Yak-9T with a massive 37mm cannon for tank busting, the Yak Yak-9K with an even bigger 45mm cannon, and the Yak-9U with a more powerful engine that could reach 435 miles per hour. Lightweight and maneuverable, the Yak-9 was loved by Soviet pilots and feared by German aviators. It remained in production even after the war ended. If you wanted the ultimate dogfighter, you chose the Yak-3. Entering service in 1944, this was the lightest and most agile Soviet fighter of the war. With a top speed of 407 miles per hour and phenomenal maneuverability, the Yak-3 dominated at low to medium altitudes. French Normandy Niemen pilots, fighting alongside the Soviets, specifically requested the Yak-3, calling it the best fighter on the Eastern Front. German pilots were warned to avoid dogfights with Yak-3s below 16,000 feet, that's how dangerous it was. Now, not every Soviet fighter was a success story. The Lag-3, whose designation supposedly stood for Lavochkin, Gorbanov, and Gudkov, the three designers, was nicknamed by pilots as "guaranteed varnished coffin" because of its wooden construction and poor performance. Heavy and underpowered, the Lag-3 was difficult to fly and maintain. However, it was important because it led to something much better. Take a Lag-3, remove the problematic inline engine, and install a powerful radial engine instead. The result? The La-5, one of the war's best fighters. First seeing action at Stalingrad in late 1942, the La-5 could reach 403 miles per hour and packed a punch with two 20mm cannons. Tough, reliable, and deadly, it helped turn the tide of the air war. The improved La-5FN with a fuel-injected engine was even better, capable of 422 miles per hour. The La-7, introduced in 1944, was the ultimate refinement of the Lavochkin line. With a top speed of 423 miles per hour, excellent maneuverability, and three 20mm cannons, it was arguably the best Soviet piston fighter of the war. Soviet ace Ivan Kozydub, who scored 62 victories, the highest Allied ace count, flew the La-7 for many of his kills. The aircraft remained competitive with anything Germany could field in 1945. The MiG-3 was designed as a high-altitude interceptor to counter German bombers. With a top speed of 398 miles per hour at altitude, it had excellent high-altitude performance. The problem? Most combat on the Eastern Front happened at low altitudes, where the MiG-3 was sluggish and difficult to handle. About 3,100 were built, but the type was phased out by 1943 as resources were directed to more versatile fighters like the Yak-9 and La-5. So we've seen them all. Every Soviet aircraft that fought in the Great Patriotic War. But let's step back for a moment and look at what these numbers really mean. June 1941, 1,200 aircraft destroyed in a single day. The Soviet Air Force was on its knees. December 1945, over 157,000 Soviet aircraft produced during the war years. The largest air force on Earth. That's not just a comeback. That's a complete transformation of warfare itself. 3 lessons emerged from the Soviet aviation story, lessons that changed military history forever. Lesson 1, quantity has its own quality. While Germany obsessed over perfect engineering, the Soviets built aircraft that were good enough, fast enough, and could be produced by the thousands. The Yak-9 wasn't the best fighter in the world, but 16,700 of them won the war. Sometimes overwhelming numbers beat technical perfection. Lesson 2, adapt or die. The Lag-3 was a disaster, pilots called it a flying coffin. But Soviet engineers didn't give up. They took that failure, changed the engine, and created the La-5, one of the war's best fighters. Failure wasn't the end. It was just data. Lesson 3, your people are your greatest weapon. Behind every aircraft was a story of sacrifice. Factory workers, many of them women and teenagers, building fighters in freezing conditions. Pilots ramming enemy aircraft when they ran out of. If this story inspired you, if you learned something new, hit that subscribe button. I dive deep into untold stories from history, the ones that textbooks miss, the ones that change how you see the world. Next video, we're exploring another incredible transformation in military technology. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe now. And thank you for watching History with me.